2 Corinthians chapter 8 and verse 6, Paul writes these words, "So we urged Titus that as he had previously made a beginning, so he would also complete in you this gracious work as well." Because of what's been taking place in my life in recent months, and certainly in recent days, I find myself sensing a kinship with this person of Titus. I had never done before. I'm familiar with him, having read this for decades now. But I see in Titus, now Titus was he was a young man who was not Jewish, who came under the preaching of the gospel through the Apostle Paul, came to faith, and became a traveling companion of Paul. He was under Paul's teaching as a part of the missionary journeys and church planting movement in the first century. And after having been with Paul for a while in his journeys, the apostle had enough confidence in Titus that he would leave him at times in a place when the work was not completely finished. Or he would send him to a place to complete work, and in such you have the case here. Titus was a part of that story leading in Acts chapter 15, where Paul realized that non-Jewish people could come to faith without becoming Jews. And they went through that whole battle, and they came to resolution to say, that's okay, here are the things that they just need to avoid, but other than that, we're happy to have them in the kingdom. Titus was one of those, but it was exceptional, and it wasn't just coincidental that he was someone that the Apostle Paul had confidence in, but he had a certain gift and skill set where in the way that he thought, how he processed information, moments, and experiences in people, that he was gifted in understanding how to get things done. He had an order kind of thought process. When Paul writes the small letter to him, he said, I left you in Crete to put in place to put in order those things that are lacking and to appoint elders in every church. And in this case, he does essentially the same thing. There is it's a giftedness. Some of it is genetically gifted. Some of it is spiritually gifted, where certain people understand the relationship of cause and effect. They see order in the world and universe. They know that things don't just happen. There's far more incidents than coincidence. Especially when they believe in the providence and the sovereignty of God, they realize that chance is not just chance. Old Testament writer said the lot is cast into the lap, but every outcome is from the Lord. Paul writes that God works all things after the counsel of his own will. And so when you use the word all, then that means all, everything. And so somebody like Titus, not by his own skills, but by his own genetic makeup and his spiritual calling, was someone who, when he's in a place and a time, he could evaluate, he could see, he could understand the relationship of how things worked and how people worked and what it took to achieve the objective to get things done. He didn't sit around and throw up his hands and say, gee, I don't know what to do. His mind was apparently always at work looking for a solution. As I was growing up as a child, it was said of me that I was mechanically inclined. Some of you old folks know that you've heard that expression before. Some of it was genetic because my dad was like that. My dad grew up on the farm, and on the farm, you learned how to get things done. He learned how to repair things, to work on automobiles and farm equipment, and so it was more than just a hand-eye coordination. It was understanding some fundamental principles, not having received an education in that, of understanding cause and effect, how things work. And so, because that's what he did, and I came along, I have his genetic predisposition, and I worked alongside him, so I learned to do those very same things. Interestingly enough, my brothers did not get those same genetic traits from our dad. To more or less, I'm not going to give you the assessment of the degree which they have that or don't have that, but it's conspicuous. I was always known as the one who could get it fixed. And the Lord has used that. He's used that personally for me, that I have a lot of things in my life that I didn't have to pay full price for. I've got a push lawnmower that didn't work for somebody else, and I bought it for a little of nothing and fixed it. It served me just fine. I have a riding lawnmower, same thing. I have a pressure washer, same thing. I have a number of things that because I know how they work, I'm able to make them work. And that's a blessing from God. But that doesn't just, it's not just limited to physical things, understanding mechanics or understanding electronics or plumbing or construction, any of those kind of things. It goes even larger than that into areas of relationships, sociology or psychology, that there's a natural explanation of cause and effect and why people do what they do, why they act as they act, the influences on lives, the shapes on them. It becomes conspicuous when you're counseling with somebody. If you hear a story enough times, you're going, you know what, I've heard this before. I know what caused this, and I know where this is going. And I think it's for that reason that in this season of my life and my ministry, that when we stepped down from the full-time pastorate in 2017, it wasn't to retire. And let's just set the record straight. It was not to retire. It was to simply change addresses and change hats. The notion of just putting my feet up, I'm actually sitting in my favorite chair in the house. This is my Papa Bear chair. Doesn't have a stick shift. It has a button because it's got an electric motor to put my feet up. Is that I can't live in this chair. I can only stand so much idleness sitting around doing nothing. I need to be engaged doing something. And so I have all these various projects around my house to do that. But that also goes into this sense of calling and purpose. That simply because I came to that place where I knew that a ministry was coming to a close didn't mean that ministry was coming to a close, that God brought me here to do what I'm doing, that we're calling it Church Rebirth Ministries. The chance to go into churches that are struggling. They're needing somebody who can come in and look at their circumstance, look at their order, look at their structure, look at their ministry, look at their values, look at those kind of things, and then look at the opportunity that they're sitting in the middle of, which is enormous. I had no idea when we first bought a place to retire to, it's been 10 years ago now, that eventually would be our place to come to, that this is what this region was going to be about. We just like the place. We like the people. We like the culture. We like the fact that you don't shovel snow here. Rarely do you shovel snow. It's just so much so much history here that we like. Knowing that God is at work even in all that, and He knew what I didn't know, that this was a place that the world was going to come to. And that the churches here, many of them were not prepared for the future that God was bringing to their doorsteps. And they wonder why, they're drying up, while people are not just dying, but they're leaving and going other places. And so their whole viability as an institution, as an organization, is somewhat suspect. They know that it's only a matter of time before attrition is going to bring their numbers down to where viability is very suspect. My wife and I are privileged to be a part of the Somerville Baptist Church, which is not one of those churches. Their main campus, they don't have enough room. They're running 2 services now. Both services are full, no parking, out of space. They launched a second campus last fall that we were a part of, renting space in a local preparatory school. And here's an image just from yesterday to show it's full already. And they have some plans about, how they're going to manage that. The need is great, and they understand that, and they're doing the things to try to effectively reach as many people as they can. It was in the context yesterday where it was shared with us that the researchers, the statisticians, say that in the next 7 years, 100,000 people who have no relationship with Christ are going to be moving just to Dorchester County alone, where we are. Now, there's a confluence of 3 counties here and some others very much close here that are all experiencing the same kind of growth. So it wouldn't be surprising that they're estimating that 500,000 people are going to be moving to this area in the next 7 years. And so the question is, what are the churches doing to prepare themselves for that? Why are churches drying up and dying when so many people are coming here and moving around them? Now, I go into these small, a lot of them are rural churches. They're not right in the center of the growthing that's taken place, but they're on the edge of it. And enough people want to move to the country, and they'll take the drive just to be out of the insanity of the traffic and the closeness. But I go into those churches, and they're just sort of rocking along, managing, paying the bills, and the ones I've been to, they're without a pastor. But I think, if they ever figured it out, if 50 new people showed up, they wouldn't know what to do with them. They're ill prepared for the possibilities of a great future tomorrow. And I look at that and I go, man, if I were them, especially the closer they are to the metro area here, that I'd be in the process of erecting a multi-purpose building. They use it as a gym or as a playground, whatever in the meantime. But so when the growth finally comes and they have that moment of turning the corner, that they're ready to be able to do something with it. But none of those churches are doing that. But there are other churches that, one that I've been to a few times, that is right in the center of things. They've been without a pastor for a number of years now. They're sitting on a nice piece of land, not at a bad location. Just within a mile of them is a $200 million mixed-use development going in. Land that's just been cleared of its trees, and they're going to be going full tilt there. So there are going to be thousands of people moving in. And a part of this being like Titus is that I realize that a part of my nature is when I see things that need to be done, the unfinished is the scourge of my life. I've known that for a long time. Whether it was, starting a project, until that project is complete, it drives me crazy because it's unfinished business. But that's the fixer in me. That's the person who says there's something that needs to be done. I know how to do it. I can't leave it undone. And so it's a real challenge for me as I go into these churches and preach, and I understand cause and effect. I understand why they're in the position they're in. I understand why they're not attracting new people. I understand why they're not baptizing anyone. I understand all those things, and I want to say to these people, there are answers. And it just drives me crazy. And what that role is, whether it's a consultant, as a interim pastor, I'm not their future. I know that's not in the cards for me. But it just eats me up to go in those places and go, oh man, what an opportunity exists here. And if they're just willing to let go, that there are explanations, and there are answers, and there are solutions, and that Titus in me says, Lord, help me make that happen. So I need for you to pray with me to that end, because that's what I'm called to do, and I want to do, and it gives me satisfaction and fulfillment. The end of last year and the beginning of this year, we had more successive opportunities to preach in these various churches. So we weren't even in our own church for almost 2 months, to get back and see people there. But this whole Titus thing has got me thinking, because there's so many things that we simply don't control, and we're trusting in God to make it happen. Now, we have a responsibility to be sensitive and open. We have a serious challenge of stewarding the opportunities, whether it's stewarding building bridges of relationship, it's stewarding the conversations that we're able to have, it's stewarding the opportunities to go in and preach. And I've shared this with you over the last several months, is that I'm divided. I know that most of these churches that I go in and preach, they're just wanting somebody to, scratch their back and tell them it's going to be okay. And that's just not in me. I think I have been known for, telling the truth in love, speaking the truth in love, but not trying to varnish or gloss over the reality of things. What they need to hear is they need to hear the truth, but with hope. And it sort of mystifies me why someone would rather have their way and die than say, well, maybe there is a better way. Maybe there is a different way. What is it God is saying to the churches here and now about what can be done, and what legacy do they want to leave behind? And so a part of my challenge, as I sit here, this is a Monday morning. which is an uncommon time for me to be shooting a video. Typically, I'm preparing the material early in the week, shooting at the middle of the week, and posting toward the end of the week. Because some of you use this for your weekend Bible study time, and so I'm trying to honor that. But some things have been happening in my own life that has precipitated my need to be here on Monday morning, to be talking about what I want to talk about, rather than launch into a new series. And my mind is racing about, where we want to go. In those times when I'm not preaching at a church, when I'm simply sitting here in front of the camera, somewhere in my house or in some location, to provide for you some spiritual fodder and food and encouragement for the journey. I guess it was, I'm not looking at a calendar right now. This is Monday. We're at the transition between January and February. So I guess it was a week and a half ago, closing on 2 weeks ago, when I received a text from my family back in Texas that my older brother was going to the Dallas VA hospital. He was in the Air Force for a few years. This is his supplement for his Social Security. This is how his insurance is from his medical coverage. My older brother just turned 70 in December. That's disconcerting to have a brother that's that old. But anyway, so I heard that he was there. I knew that he had been having some issues and been struggling. He and his wife, thankfully, had got to come and spend some time with us here last fall, and we were grateful for that a few days. But he even admitted then there were some things that he was struggling with that some of it's a typical aging kind of thing. It's like your memory isn't as sharp as it used to be, remembering names and places. But it was even more than that was frustrating from him. And he felt something was wrong inside his head. And so he went, and my family, as I've explained before, in my dad's side, is we have a history of brain tumors. Now, some of you know that early last year, I went and had a series of MRIs on my head, and what they discovered was absolutely nothing. No surprise to some of you. So it answered that question for me. No tumor and no anything else. My younger brother, a few years back, had the same thing. But we always knew that was a possibility because that was just, statistically in our family, over a couple of generations, we've seen that. And so I immediately got online and booked passage to Texas and flew in Saturday a week ago to Texas to stay. My younger brother picked me up at the airport in Dallas, and I stayed with him. And so we were back and forth to the hospital where they did some scans and they did MRIs on my brother, and to the best of their knowledge, they said that he has a glioma in his thalamus and hippocampus. Now, that doesn't mean much to most of us, but that means there's a tumor there, and it's a rather large tumor, and it's pressing on that part of his brain that accounts for why in a normal speech like this, there are common words that in that moment, he couldn't come up with that word. One of the diagnostic tests they do, the doctor would go, you know what this is? Do you know what this is? Do you know what that is? And I'd seen this with my own dad when he was diagnosed with a tumor, 30 years ago, almost 30 years ago, that he didn't know the word for clock, or he was asked to draw the face of a clock and he couldn't do it. And so that helps them diagnose exactly what region of the brain is being affected. Fortunately it wasn't affecting motor skills. He didn't have any weakness in his body, but those kind of issues, and it was affecting vision in one of his eyes. And so they kept him for a couple of days and met with a neurologist, and it was while we were there that this whole Titus thing sort of appeared in my mind, and really accounts for why we're using this as our springboard today. That, my old brother and sister-in-law, they have a really nice place in the country, and the back door on their house, when you close it, it wouldn't latch. And so my mom, who turns 90 this May, her boyfriend, went out there and fixed it. And When I heard about that, I was sitting in the living room with my younger brother and his wife. I said, that just mystifies me, how somebody doesn't know how a door works and that it doesn't latch or unlatch. And I just can't imagine that. And my sister-in-law says, be careful now. So for me, it's like, number one, I can't leave that unfixed. I'd be fixing it. I'd be figuring out how it worked so that it would work. And that's where I got to thinking about this is why I'm so driven. This is why I can't put my feet up in this season of my life. I'm thankful to have the health and the energy and the strength and the connections and the giftedness of God and all these kind of things, that when I go into a place that there are needs that are conspicuous to me, I want to fix them. I want to say, oh, come on, folks. Well, just here, let's have a conversation. It doesn't have to be like this. So all that's in the background, and so we're back and forth between, Mesquite, where my younger brother lives, and South Dallas, where the VA hospital is, and McKinney, where my mom is, north of there, about 30 miles. And, we put a lot of miles on those few days. And where we currently stand, some of you have seen my post on Facebook, both what I wrote and the brief video, that my brother was discharged from the VA hospital because they're not equipped to do what needs to be done. He and my sister-in-law are awaiting a consult at the UT Southwestern Medical Center, which is one of the foremost neuro centers certainly in the state of Texas, to go there for whatever the next is. They're talking about doing a biopsy and talking about what comes next and next and next and next. And so I came home, booked a flight last Wednesday morning and came home knowing there's nothing more I can do there, to come back and wait for the next phone call. It could come today, it could come tomorrow, which is, I'm offering this by way of an explanation to say that I'm not sure what my availability during the next couple of 3 weeks is going to be able to sustain providing a weekly video for you, unless I scale it back. I'm using my phone when I'm in Texas because I don't have the equipment there to do what I typically do. Because God is speaking through all of this, absolutely speaking through all of this, and I want to be able to share that. And as I continue to pray about opportunities here, that God is managing all these things to align them for His purposes and His honor that I want to be a good steward of. So here I sit on a Sunday morning thinking about what I want to do in our time on a weekly basis, posting words of spiritual value and encouragement to each of us because there's something that God has to say for us, in the hopes that you can discover, really who you are and your identity in Christ and what it is that He's designed you to do and to be. And, some of us, that becomes more conspicuous than for others, but it's possible for everyone. There are many of you that are you have the spiritual gift of help. You just like coming alongside and supporting and encouraging and helping. You're not the leader. You're not the point person. You're not the fix-it person. But you don't want to sit around doing nothing either. And listen, those of us that are called to take a lead, we can't do it without you. And your encouragement and support is just invaluable to be able to come alongside and to be able to do that. And so for each of you to look at your life and to look at biblical characters and see who you identify with because you see some traits in them or in their circumstances or in their ministry or in their service that you relate to, and realizing that it's not an accident that we are genetically who we are by the design of God. We were fearfully and wonderfully made. We're the product of a designer's hand, not of chance. Chance doesn't exist. If God works all things after the counsel of His own will, if the lot is cast in the lap, but every outcome is from the Lord, there's no chance involved in that. And so rather than live our life like it's a product of chance, we ought to live our life like it's the product of purpose. And that we find satisfaction, frankly, when we get to fulfill our purpose. We have the joy of seeing and knowing and being and doing and realizing that it really does matter. So I'm looking forward to this week to see what unfolds. I get to have coffee with my pastor on a regular basis to talk about the life of our church here, and his desire to have more campuses, to be more effective in the area as a part of that. And it's not coincidental that he's my friend, and we're part of the journey of that church right now. And then I have an expanding network of pastor friends here, and that as God makes a way, that I get a chance to go in and speak and preach and do whatever the next thing is to do. Our ministry, Church Rebirth Ministry, because we are a 501c3, I have a number of trustees that by law are supposed to make sure that we do right by whatever we have. Now, it's not a lot, but they do their job. We were supposed to meet last Wednesday, and I had to cancel that because I wasn't going to be back. I'm a little uncertain about scheduling another one, with the uncertainty of what that next phone call and what is going to be entailed in that, to board a plane, to go to Texas, and not be able to book a return flight because we don't know what's after that. But it's all in God's hands, and he can be trusted with that. But the challenge for us is to be able to walk in faith through that. So all that being said, I know who I am. I know what I'm supposed to do. I would ask you to pray with me about, all of these issues. Certainly the kingdom aspect of this journey and challenge is first and foremost. That I want to be found faithful. That as God opens doors, as God provides me to engage people in relational conversation, to talk about where they are, and the churches, that I don't have any illusions about having all the answers, but I know what I'm called to do, and I want to be able to help them achieve that which God has called them to. And so pray that the opportunities that I seek here, that the Lord would reveal in His time and His way, and it would be clear to all of us that this is what He would have us to do, so that I would live every day in more specific purpose in this context, in this environment, because I so want to be used. And I so look forward. You know that, I don't know if you get the impression, but I love studying. I love preparing. I've right here to the left of my, I keep at least one book that I'm trying to read through. And right now I've got, I think, 3 or 4 books that are waiting my attention. And so in the myriad of things because I'm a Mr. Fix-It, I have projects around here that need to be fixed. I have a couple of projects in the garage. I have a project out back in the shed. I have a fence to be put up. I have things around here, so I'm stewarding my time based on the weather and other opportunity, and then to try to connect with people, and then try to study and prepare and shoot videos and edit those and arrange interviews, and then to travel for those kind of things. It's like life is just not. There's not enough time, 7 days isn't enough days in the week. 24 hours enough hours in the day. And even though I run out of gas like everybody else at this stage, and late in the day I'm wanting to take a good nap. Sunday afternoon I'm really wanting to take a good nap. Everything is secondary to being and doing that which God has called me and equipped me to do. Knowing that if I get run over by a truck tomorrow, that I will have satisfied what God has called me to do, and I'll be ready for checkout time. But we're not ready yet. So pray with me about that and these opportunities. Then pray with my family, because this is not just about us and the health of a sibling, but this is about the witness to people around us. The opportunity in conversation to say God, is faithful, and He will see us through this. And the spiritual implications for us. There are things that God is wanting to do in all of our lives, not in spite of this, but because of this. This is a familiar road that we have walked many times. 1965 was the first time when I have a first cousin who was diagnosed as a young adult, as a child, with a brain tumor. They removed it, and he lived a long life, lived into the last year. Didn't affect him at all. He had a full life. Then it was in 1979 that my dad's mom had a tumor removed. It was 1981 or 82 when his sister, just above him in age, didn't survive a brain tumor. It was I think it was in 1996 that my own dad was diagnosed with a brain tumor. They successfully removed it, and he lived, for 13 years after that. It affected him and his health. He was never completely the same, but he had a full life after that. And then we think, and not confirmed, that his oldest sister in Canada in 2000, two, I believe it was, passed away. I don't know whether it was true or not that she had a brain tumor, but anyway, so now my older brother Ronnie, here in 2023, a slow growing glioma in his head. We don't know how long he's had it. That's affected his life, and now we stand with his life in the balance. God is faithful. And he can do more than we can ask or think. And whatever he chooses to allow to transpire will be the right thing, and he can be trusted in that. So just pray with us and my family that we steward the opportunity well. And I will post you, I will shoot videos as I can going into these next few weeks for what those hold. And we will see what God does. Thank you for your prayer and your faithful support. We will see you when we see you. God bless you.